Hey everybody, my name is Nick O'Day. I'm the City of Johns Creek's Chief Data Officer, which is located just outside of Atlanta for those of you that aren't familiar with our geography. With me today is John Vada. We are here today to walk you guys through how state and local governments are using Placekey in ArcGIS Pro to access previously unavailable insights and drive data transparency. So the way this is going to work is John will take it off first and we'll give you a brief understanding of what Placekey is. I'll jump in the middle and kind of give you guys a really concrete example of how we use Placekey in Johns Creek, and then there will be a really good demo at the very end. So John, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Nick. So Placekey is a collaboration of over 500 organizations that are committed to data fungibility in the geospatial industry. The form that takes is through a free and open universal identifier for addressable places. And so Placekey helps solve two core problems. First is address matching, given inconsistencies across data sets. And the second is for point of interest or business name matching for businesses with shared or similar addresses that can be difficult to distinguish. Next slide, please. So here's just a couple examples of what we're talking about. So the top row highlighted in blue is just a difference of a business name. Highlighted in green on the fourth row is an abbreviation of a street name, where you go from Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard to West MLK Boulevard. And Placekey is designed to implement all of these heuristics to be able to identify this as the same place. And then finally, the fifth row down is potentially the most common gotcha in POI matching, the classic McDonald's ''S versus McDonald's. And Placekey is built to handle cases like this. Next slide, please. So the way we do this today is we normalize and potentially decompose the address, getting rid of misspellings, fixing capitalization issues, and then we implement some sort of fuzzy matching, such as formulas, hard-coded lookups, and some people go a little bit more sophisticated using machine learning models. The key is that this is all done in-house, and it's just a large amount of replicated, duplicated effort. The last way that you might approach this is you would geocode both data sets, and you would do a spatial join. And this works in most cases, but in the situation where you have very closely grouped POIs, such as stores in a shopping mall or offices in a building, Placekey might offer a strong complement to the spatial join. Next slide, please. So Placekey is structured like a what and a where. And the what part is an address encoding and a POI encoding. And the where part is a general, think about it as a hexagon about the size of a city block, which generally shows where the place is. And when we were building Placekey, we were thinking about what is the simplest way you can describe a place? And we boiled it down to what is at an address and generally where is it? Next slide, please. So going in a little bit more on the structure of the Placekey and sort of working back to front, starting with the where component. It's a 15,000 square meter hexagon, which is based on the H3 hex grid system, which was originally open sourced by Uber. And this just generally helps narrow in on where in the world is this place. And then the what component, which is in this example, the 223-357, has two segments, which is the address encoding and the POI encoding. And the address encoding is essentially the address within that hexagon. And the POI encoding is only for business names, and will encode the name of the business also within that hexagon. Next slide, please. And so as mentioned previously, Placekey is a broad coalition of organizations committed to data transparency, and it spans private sector, public sector, nonprofit, academia, and we're really happy to have the support of such great organizations. Next slide, please. And so without further ado, I want to reintroduce Nick O'Day, the Chief Data Officer for the City of Johns Creek, Georgia, to go into an example of how we used Placekey to merge data from disparate sources.
Thanks, John. So basically, to go through our use case, we have to start back at the beginning of the pandemic. So to all those people living under a rock or that are really fortunate they've been living under a rock, basically the economy shut down in the United States in around March 2020. And it was a few weeks after that that the federal government responded with the CARES Act. And within that CARES Act was the PPP, which is basically the Paycheck Protection Program. And so the idea behind the program was to allow businesses to apply for loans to help them kind of bridge the gap to get through some of the harder times of the pandemic while their businesses were shut down, or while people are not going out to eat in restaurants or what have you. So fast forward from March to September of 2020, Johns Creek signed an agreement with Fulton County, the county that we're in, that we live in, to receive about $3.5 million from their allocation of CARES Act funding. Thankfully, in Johns Creek, we didn't end up spending all that 3.5 million. We only spent a smaller portion of that. And at that point, the elected officials said, hey, we've got this $2.7 million left. We don't need it, directly for COVID relief or response. Let's distribute it to businesses the same way that the PPP loans were done, but just as a grant program. So of course, the major problem here is how do you do that to businesses equitably? And so in order to get to that point, we needed to answer basically 3 different questions, right? So the first was who already received loans, who didn't receive loans, and what did that look like? What does the distribution of loans look like in other cities nearby? And underpinning this entire thing is the common kind of spatial questions that any GIS or data scientist is used to dealing with, right? So it's the where is this stuff happening, how much is it happening, and what types? In this specific instance, it's where are the businesses located that got money or didn't get money, how much did they receive, and then what types of businesses were the ones that were receiving assistance. So we kind of backed out of the process a little bit and said, all right, so here are the 3 major steps that we have, right? So we've got to go and download this data from the federal government, the PPP distribution data. We know we're going to have to filter it down somehow and kind of only look at Fulton County and the different cities. And there's Johns Creek up in the top northeastern corner there that's outlined in black. And then from that, we've got to somehow publish this to Esri's cloud and then put it inside of a dashboard to make it really easy to visualize and to analyze. So when we started looking at the data from the government, we realized that there are a lot of issues with it. So when we're looking at our own business license data, we have about 3,000 businesses in the city. We're a population of around 85,000 people. So it's not unwieldy to go through these things in groups or to use a little bit of manual work. But the PPP data set is over 5.2 million records, which is really great, because that shows how many businesses were helped nationwide. But that's way too many to try to do anything manual with. So we started going, kind of down the list of how are we going to slice this thing? How are we going to eat this elephant, basically? And so the next thing we thought is, okay, well, let's simplify our workload and only figure out how to download only the records we need. Well, that's not possible because the PPP data is basically 7 huge CSV files. So then we thought, all right, well, if we have to download the whole thing, I'm sure they have some kind of unique identifier in there. Well, no, not really. They have loan IDs, which mean nothing to us. They probably mean a lot to the banks that issue the loans, but yeah, not so helpful. So then we thought, all right, well, what if we just geocode everything? We geocode all 5.2 million records, and then we do some massive spatial intersection. And as John alluded to already, when you're looking at potentially tightly clustered businesses, in a small geographic area, you might have some success in doing a spatial join, but you likely are going to join things that just should not be joined at all. So then we thought, all right, like, we forget all these other slick ways of doing it. Let's just try to match on an address. We're not going to do a spatial join. We'll just match keyword on keyword. And as you can see in the example that we have above, this is a business named Radar, no fault of their own, but for some reason in the PPP data set, they have no address. Why? I have no idea. Write your congressman. Not really, that's a joke. So then the next step that we went to was, all right, well, if we can't use their address, we can't do a spatial join, let's try to just match on their names. And the names are really inconsistent. They're spelled inconsistently, just based on when you Google search some of these folks. So that's when we came upon the realization that, hey, we've got this thing called a place key that we've been using and appending to all of our own data here at the city. So why not try to leverage that? So what we ended up doing was use ArcGIS Pro to process these PPP data records through. Essentially what we did is as I mentioned before, we downloaded the entire data set. We filtered down to just the zip codes that were within Fulton County because those seemed like they would be a little bit more accurate. We geocoded around 28,000 records that were all in Fulton. And we needed to do that just because we needed to correct the cities that were being reported for each one of those businesses. We have a big problem with a lot of city limits not being clearly understood by businesses in our region. So once we did that, that kind of helped us standardize our addresses a little bit. But then we really started to use Placekeys API to append a place key to the PPP data. And so now, the final step here basically was taking our address points that were linked to our own business locations, and then joining that data to the PPP data based on the place key. So once we had accomplished that, then the rest of the process was pretty easy, just publishing a hosted feature layer up to ArcGIS Online, and then visualizing that inside of a dashboard. So the amount of time that we saved, was really phenomenal compared to some of the other alternatives that we were looking at, where we thought, okay, well, we'll just deputize half of the city staff and have them just start going through this stuff, which clearly wouldn't have been possible. So I'm going to hand it back to John now to kind of wrap it up with a little bit more information about the Placekey spec.
Thanks, Nick. So to get involved with Placekey, should you be interested, we have our website here, placekey.io, and the API docs at docs.placekey.io. We have some Python tutorials available, as well as our open source Python library, as well as our library. We also have integrations for Excel and Google Sheets. Of course, the Esri ArcGIS Pro Toolbox. We strive to be there wherever you do your data pre-processing. Another thing we're really excited about is the Placekey community, which is a 7,000 plus member community of academics, geospatial researchers, members of the state and local government community to discuss ideas. And so if you're interested, we definitely encourage you to get involved. And so now I'm going to move on to a quick demo of the toolbox in ArcPro. And so first things first, to sort of get the toolbox, go to this link. We would download the zip file for the repo. And we can install this after you unzip it into your ArcPro. So basically you're going to reference this placekey.pyt file. I've already done it here. And I've also brought in two layers here. One is a data set of businesses maintained by Johns Creek, and another is a subset of the PPP data with zip codes that intersect with the Johns Creek businesses to make the problem a little bit more tractable. And so if I check out this Johns Creek businesses file, you can see we've got business names, addresses, city, state, zip. We also have some more information about, the phone, the mailing address, whether it's home-based, some great info here. So what I'm going to do is take these two layers and merge them together using Placekey. So I'll first start with this JC businesses file. So I'm going to go to get Placekeys for POIs. I'm going to select this Johns Creek businesses as my input, use my attributes for the where part, and I'm just going to specify business name for the location name, location address for the address, city, zip, and state. For region name, country, I'm going to leave blank since it will default to the US. And I'm going to say Johns Creek businesses, Placekeys. Click run. So it looks like we finished here. Just to quickly check how it went, we can look at the messages and see there were a handful of object IDs that didn't get Placekeys. That's fine. The data is going to be dumped out into, let me refresh my geodatabase, this file called JC Business Placekeys. I'm going to add this to my map here. And if I just look at this layer, it's Placekeys, and it's the API fields back that we sent it. And so we need to join this data back on the object ID. So I'll do that here. It's recognized what I need to do. So I'm going to take the input table, join back this Placekeys file on the object ID. And if I view my attribute table, now I should have Placekeys on this data. So here I've got my column of Placekeys. So then I can do the same thing with the PPP data. I'll check it out first. And I can see here, we ran this through a geocoder, so we have some geocoder results. I want to use the original address that was given though. So business name, it looks like. Business name, address, city 1, state 1, zip 1. So I can do the same thing. I say get Placekeys for POIs. My input data set is the PPP. I'm going to use my attributes to define the Placekeys. And my location name is going to be business name, address, city 1, zip 1, state 1. And I'm going to save this in JC PPP Placekeys. Oops, looks like I'm caps lock, JC PPP Placekeys, and run it. And it looks like we're done here. So in a similar way, I'll just double check the messages. And looks like there were a handful that didn't get Placekeys, but given the size, 3,800, we're hitting pretty strong match rates here. So get rid of that. I'm going to refresh my geo database. And I'm going to add this to my map and join this file back to JCPPP. So joins and relates. And it looks like I'm going to change this to Placekeys, and we're going to do it on the object ID. And now we will have Placekeys in this file as well. So now all that's left to do is merge the two data sets on the Placekey, and we can do some analysis. So I'm going to take my JC businesses file, joins and relates. We're going to join Johns Creek PPP. Input join field is the business's Placekeyed. Also on Placekey. Click OK. Then I'm going to just do a selection here. I am interested in instances where the loan amount is greater than 0. And I also want to just ensure that I'm not taking in invalid Placekeys. So not equal to invalid address. Click OK. And then I'm going to export those features. Then finally, I should be able to then look at all the businesses that received PPP loans. And if we want to do a little bit of analysis here, we can go to symbology, look at graduated colors, and we can look at the loan amount, and maybe we make some more. We make 10 buckets or so. And then maybe we can format these to be a bit bigger. So we can say, let's make these 10, click apply. So maybe we'll move the outline. So now we can see that there's a large cluster of large loans kind of going down through the central thoroughfare of Johns Creek, and then a few other very large loans kind of clustered around the periphery. If we click in, we can sort of see, zoom into one of these addresses. And we can see there's one InterTrack, there's C2 Education,
and there's this business. And you can see we're differentiating in between the different suite numbers. So we're able to detect, for instance, here, C2 Education is at suite 100, and this business here is in suite 250. So they're in the same building, same address, but we're able to resolve different entities and in fact do a join at this level of detail without messing up without the geocoding needing to be perfect. And so that's one of the benefits of Placekey when you're doing POI matching. So it's a robust tool for this use case. I definitely encourage you to check it out. And so this is just a quick example. I wanted to turn it over to Nick again to just quickly go over a little bit more advanced use case where he was able to make some very cool dashboards in ArcGIS Online. So take it away, Nick.
Thanks, John. So what you see on the screen now is just one of the pages that we have on side of our open data portal inside of one of our hub sites that we've built. So basically what we're doing is premiering this dashboard essentially to both our elected officials, staff, the public, anybody that wants it, where they can go in and compare the total number of PPP loans. You know, in this case, in Johns Creek, it was about $115 million, you know, as well as the total number of jobs to other cities within Fulton County. So by default, it's Alpharetta, which is right next to us. But one of the more interesting cities, obviously, is the city of Atlanta, which compared to us, yes, they're a lot larger, but their businesses got about $1.6 billion. So the one last thing that's really cool here is being able to go into either one of these maps and search for any of the different companies that potentially received funds. So in this case, I'll look up one of my favorite coffee shops, Peach Coffee, just to see, you know, if they did get a loan, which looks like they did, and looks like they received $34,000 for 9 jobs, which seems like a pretty darn good return on investment to me.